Welcome back to Christian Questions on News Talk 104.7 WXLM. Our subject this morning, do you recognize his voice? To be a part of our program, call 860-442-9956. That's 442-WXLM.
And Jonathan, we're talking about the voice of Jesus and the parable of the Good Shepherd, and we're in the middle of contrasting that voice with the voice of the Pharisees, which was the other spiritual leadership, and boy, what a difference, what a total difference in the way they approached things. But let's wrap this part up, Jonathan, with Matthew 10, verses 5 through 7.
These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news, the kingdom of heaven has come near.
And Jonathan, this is an important point because, we had mentioned, Don had brought the parable up to today.
Mm-hmm.
And in principle, he is 100% right. However, this particular parable was spoken for that particular day because he was dealing with the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And there was a gathering out of Israel first before the gospel call went out to the Gentiles.
That's right. Good point.
So this parable is dealing with that. Next week, we're going to deal with a parable that deals with after that. So there's a dispensational difference here. The calling out from the purely Jewish field, if you will, versus the calling out to the gospel from the rest of the world, which we'll deal with next week.
It's like a harvest.
Right, exactly. And we're mixing pictures, but that's true. It's like a harvest. You're gathering in the fruits of the labor of the season of the seed sowing and so forth. Let's now continue with the parable a little bit more.
John 10:11 through 15. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, who is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and runs away. And the wolf snatches them and scatters them. The hired hand runs away because a hired hand does not care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep.
Again, Jonathan, he's laying out for us the fact that he's the good shepherd. He lays down his life for the sheep, and that's what shepherds literally did. They would risk their lives. And he's contrasting that with a hired hand who's not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. And again, let's go back to just another comment here on that physical happening.
That is an hireling. The owner of the flock or his sons usually did the shepherding, or sometimes an employee who was given an interest in the increase of the flock, as for instance Jacob and his father-in-law Laban.
So, in other words, when you had someone who was given an interest in the increase of the flock, they had some ownership.
Mm-hmm.
They would fight for the sheep.
Yes.
But if you had somebody who was just saying, okay, hey, look, take care of my sheep for me, I'll be back, when big trouble comes, what do?
They're out of there.
Yeah, I'm gone. And so you have this, Jesus is saying that I have ownership here. This is something that I'm willing to lay my life down for. And the previous shepherds of Israel, so to speak, didn't do that. And again, we have a prophecy that really kind of explains that to us.
Ezekiel 34:2 through 6. Mortal, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, to the shepherds, Thus says the Lord God, Ah, you shepherds of Israel, who have been feeding yourselves, should not shepherds feed the sheep? You eat the fat, you clothe yourselves with the wool, you slaughter the fatlings, but you do not feed the sheep. You have not strengthened the weak, you have not healed the sick, you have not bound up the injured, you have not brought back the strayed, you have not sought the lost, but with force and harness you have ruled them. So they were scattered, because there was no shepherd, and scattered they became food for all the wild animals. My sheep were scattered, they wandered over all the mountains, on every high hill. My sheep were scattered over all the face of the earth, with no one to search or seek for them.
And boy, what a great prophecy of how the shepherds of Israel really let the sheep down. Because they didn't focus on the important things. All right, so Jonathan, we have that example, that prophecy in Ezekiel, which again we'll probably come back to next week, because that has a now application, as Don was saying earlier. Let's talk a little bit about the wolves. It talks about wolves coming in, and those who are just merely hired, they scatter. Well, Jesus talked about this as well.
That's right, Matthew 7:13-19. Jesus' words: "Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, and the road is easy that leads to destruction, and there are many who take it. For the gate is narrow, and the road is hard that leads to life, and there are few who find it. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorns, or figs from thistles? In the same way, every good tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear good fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire."
So Jesus was warning about wolves in sheep's clothing.
Yes.
And he's saying that you need to, and he's talking to his followers here in Matthew 7, you need to enter through this narrow gate. He's saying, and that's a difficult one. It's a gate that is narrow and difficult to negotiate, versus the road to destruction is an 8-lane highway.
It's broad.
And it's smooth and easy, and you go really fast. And he says there are many who take it. But he's saying that his sheep, again, he's talking, if we put it into the picture language of this parable, he's saying, if you're going to follow me, you're going to enter this narrow gate, you're going to take this difficult pathway, and you're also going to beware, because there are those that are going to come in that look like they're one of you, but they're really not, and they're there just for their own purposes and not to glorify God, but to glorify themselves. It kind of goes back to what Julia said much earlier.
Mm-hmm.